After 15 years of marriage, the woman I once believed to be my partner in everything stood before the mirror, dressing with deliberate care. Her hands moved gracefully over silk and jewelry, her reflection glowing with anticipation. She thought she was preparing for an evening of passion with the man she'd been hiding from me, a man she believed I knew nothing about. Before leaving, she leaned close enough for me to catch the faint scent of her perfume and whispered, "James, tonight I want to feel wild, truly alive." She had no idea that her bags were already packed, her keys rendered useless by the new locks I'd fitted, and her secret poised to unravel in the most public way possible. What she also didn't know was that her lover's wife was sitting at a restaurant table, divorce papers clenched in her hand, waiting to face them both. For over a decade and a half, Emily and I had built a life that, to the outside world, seemed steady and enviable. We raised 2 children together, navigated family milestones, and shared countless small joys. Inside jokes over dinner, lazy Sunday mornings, the quiet comfort of a familiar hand in mine. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The warmth between us began to cool. What replaced it was subtle at first: late nights at work, the sound of her hushed voice carrying from behind closed doors, the pale glow of her phone illuminating her face long after she thought I'd fallen asleep. The connection we'd relied on for years began to fray. I noticed every change in her behavior, each tiny deviation from the woman I knew so well. When I tried to ask her about it, her answers were slippery and vague, laced with half-truths. I told myself it was a rough patch, one we could overcome as we had before. But the unease gnawed at me, whispering that someone else now occupied her heart. The truth began to surface in fragments. She lingered over her phone with a smile she never offered me anymore. She started paying careful attention to her appearance again. Subtle changes at first, then deliberate efforts to look striking. One evening, I overheard her speaking softly into the phone. I couldn't make out her words, but the intimacy in her tone was undeniable. Later, a glance at her messages confirmed my worst suspicions. From that moment, my mind sharpened into quiet, methodical resolve. I tracked her movements, noted the errands that stretched into hours, and tallied the unexplained gaps in her days. The more I observed, the clearer the picture became. When I finally learned that her lover was married as well, an idea took root, one that would expose them both in a single, undeniable moment. I reached out to the man's wife. At first, the conversation felt strange, even surreal, but as we spoke, it became clear we were fighting parallel battles. Both of us had been trying to make sense of half-truths and emotional distance, both of us carrying the sting of betrayal. We agreed to join forces, to confront them together where there would be no escaping the truth. As Emily dressed upstairs for her secret rendezvous, thinking she was stepping into a night of passion, I quietly packed her belongings into suitcases and set them neatly by the door. The locks clicked into place under my hands, each turn sealing off the home she had chosen to abandon in spirit long before this night. I felt no rush of anger, only a cold certainty that this was the end. She came downstairs radiant, her excitement disguised as casual detachment. She offered some thin excuse for her evening plans, and when I said nothing, she smiled as if I were a harmless bystander in her private adventure. "I need to feel wild and alive tonight," she said. Her words landed like a knife, but I kept my expression unreadable. When she left, I watched her car disappear into the night, knowing she was driving straight toward her reckoning. At the restaurant, her lover arrived first, expecting a stolen evening. Instead, his wife was there waiting, her voice slicing through the low hum of conversation as she laid the divorce papers on the table in front of him. The diners turned to watch, the air charged with shock. Emily walked in moments later, her face lighting with expectation, only to freeze at the sight before her. The man she thought she would meet was cornered, his affair exposed in the harshest way possible. The fantasy she'd been chasing shattered in an instant, replaced by humiliation she could not mask. While that scene unfolded, I remained at home, the house now mine alone. I ignored the flood of calls and messages that began to light up my phone. Pleas, apologies, frantic promises to change. The bags by the door were waiting for her return, a silent declaration that there was no going back. In that stillness, I realized that exposing her betrayal was never about punishing her. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about refusing to let her deception define the rest of my life. 15 years had ended, but in their place, I had something far more valuable. The freedom to rebuild without lies, and the strength to do it on my own terms. Sometimes, the most painful truths are also the most liberating.